Good afternoon. How are you? Well, it's a beautiful day out here. It was like 8 miles an hour, but right now I don't feel any wind at all. And it's 40 something, but it feels more comfortable than that. I don't know if it's the psychology of the sunlight. And if Thomas Jefferson were here, he might add something about the the high pressure given the sunlight and so forth. But he's not here, so you have to depend on me. And don't depend on me if you're making trips that really need that information to be accurate, including the barometric pressure lecture that I give occasionally. So this is a great day, and I'll tell you why. Mr. Trump, who has done everything he can that is terrible as a businessman, and we all know the details, today was told he owes $350 million and he's banned from New York for 3 years. Huzzah! Great news. You know, the accounting is moving in. This is really good stuff. And on the criminal side of the ledger, I believe when the dust settles in Georgia, the prosecutor is going to be fine, and I hope, meaning that they'll dismiss the charges to remove her, and that I hope then the judge will say, well, it's high time to set a trial date, and that would be marvelous. But let me go into the Georgia thing a little bit more. It was fun today, in a certain sense, for myself, a trial lawyer among other things, listening to what's going on in the Georgia courtroom and gauging how I thought the lawyers were doing. Now, there's a nearby courtroom in Fairfax that has kind of a, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like a theater in the round. And lawyers go down into the centerpiece and they argue their motions, and then the next motion comes on. I haven't been there in a while. But because you had to wait for your turn, I thought of it like a swimming meet. And that is, I'd see what the lawyer had to say, and I'd give them an award like you would at a diving competition. And so when a lawyer didn't know the client's name, he was worth a 2, and it happened. And the beauty of it, or disaster about it, is that clients didn't often go there, so they didn't know their attorney didn't remember their name. And I think now remembering it, reading it, presenting it in some way, knowing the number of your case so that you can actually deal with the judge is important. Okay, so with that same measure of discrimination, if you will, I looked at these lawyers, and the woman merchant who brought the motion attacking the DA, Willis, she never asks a leading question. I may be wrong, maybe a couple came through. But when you have an adverse witness, you want to ask the cross-examination question. And the cross-examination question, when it's your opponent, is a leading question, meaning I can say, isn't it a fact that you had absolutely no evidence when you filed these papers with the court to dismiss me? If I were Willis, and I was saying that. But they don't do that. Now, let's go through the testimony a little bit. The story in the court is the motion provides for 2 things, really. One is, when did the DA, Willis, have a relationship that was romantic, repeatedly stated, with Wade, who became her lead, one of her 3 lead prosecutors. There are 3 prosecutors that they took on for this case. Now, why is that important? Because they want to say it was before he came aboard, so that they can say that the funds he spent on her in their romantic relationship was kind of a payoff to her at a time when she needed money. So that's how he got the job. Okay, now, what's wrong with that picture? Well, number one, it appears that she may not have had any romantic relationship with him until after he was on board, number one. And how is this corroborated? Well, there are a couple of things about that, and I'll just do the brief outline. The brief outline is she was dating someone else. Her father testified to that. He was concerned about cancer, and so he was not interested in dating. He was concerned in a very existential way about his health. And there was also the question during this period of COVID. Okay, so all those things were obstacles. Then, number two, the second issue is, well, he wasn't just taking her out the way a gentleman might and paying the expenses. No, this was a way to pay her off. They don't say it exactly this way, but that's what they're trying to get at. And she explained how she paid her own way, and she paid her own way in cash, and she did pay other times using a credit card and so forth. And Wade, the boyfriend, and her, the charming lady, they went to a variety of outings, and sometime more recently, they stopped having a romantic relationship, but they're still friends. That happens. So, her dad testified that when she was living with him, she, the prosecutor Willis, was going out with a DJ that her dad didn't seem to have much use for. And her father testified corroborating her, and Willis testified corroborating Wade. And so one of the hopes they had was that they could show that Wade, told his lawyer in the attorney-client relationship details that they would like to know for this case. Now, apparently, I'm not sure of this, but it sounds like it, at some point or other in text messages, his lawyer, Wade's lawyer, may have said things that Wade told him, but Wade had not authorized him to say these things. I don't know how strong they are. Now, Wade submitted an affidavit at some point, and they want to say that affidavit is contradicted by whatever he told his lawyer. But that's not available to them because it's privileged. Are you still with me? So I had kind of a busman's holiday because I was doing something that didn't take a lot of energy, and I was enjoying, in a bad way, listening to this because I was looking for the errors they made. Now, many years ago, I took a short program at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And it's because I had a girlfriend who was a marvelous performer who actually ended up on Broadway in a Little Night Music and is still a performer today. She has the voice of an angel. And she said, because I was interested in public speaking and maybe politics, I should go to that school. And I did. And one of the things that they taught us was sometimes it's better to watch a bad actor in a movie because you can see what they're doing wrong. So when I say I was looking at it, I was kind of looking at that. And one of the reasons that I was not impressed, and this is advantage U.S. government, well, in this case, Georgia government, Georgia prosecutor's office, they don't seem to know to use cross-examination, and that is to say, to ask leading questions when you have an adverse party on the stand. Okay, so what's an adverse party? An adverse party is Wade, the boyfriend, is the prosecutor Willis, is the prosecutor's dad, because presumably he's on his daughter's side, and like that. But they don't ask leading questions. And when I say they, not only Merchant, who brought the motion, but also the other lawyers who were there to ask questions. Now, a leading question, and you've all heard it, from the Perry Mason crowd until today in all the cop shows and all the prosecutor shows and all the movies, in this case, to say, isn't it a fact that you had a relationship with the prosecutor from 2019 forward, and isn't that right? Okay, yes or no? Now, you should ask a question that gets a yes, because you want to build the confidence of the person on the witness stand that there is no value in lying, because I, the leading questioner, know everything. But they didn't use it. So it means they don't know how to use it. They're used to asking questions conversationally. They do too many depositions and don't do it. And maybe they didn't prepare so they could hone in on the things that would be incontrovertible, that would make their case. And they, the defense, they have to make this case. They have the burden of proof. Prosecution doesn't have to prove anything, but they have. Now, some people thought this case was weaker when Wade was on the stand. Now, he, as the gentleman caller, was, I thought, thoughtful and answered the questions, but he came on right after an old friend of the prosecutor's claimed that she saw both the prosecutor and Mr. Wade hugging and kissing. Well, that didn't make any sense. Nobody has seen that. And also, this one witness apparently performed badly at the office and was let go, and that caused bad blood. And her testimony, therefore, was suspicious. But Wade came on right after her. And then some people that I have a lot of respect for and enjoy, they had the opinion, oh, it's all over. Oh, it's terrible. And maybe some people watching it, because Dave, I said Dave, the Wade, he was carrying a lot of weight then. But when the next witness turned out to be the DA, oh, she came in with hellfire, and she just delivered a powerful defense of their relationship, and accused successfully, I think, in the courtroom and outside where it was published, that this was all just a lie by the defense. Now, it doesn't help outside the courtroom that Trump's people worked with the divorce lawyer for the wife of Wade. Okay, so I hope that's not made this too Byzantine a relationship. So what does it all boil down to? Okay, they asked questions badly. They didn't figure out a way to cross-examine the witness. Remember, they have the burden. And in the end, today, and it's still going on, I believe, in the end today, they were trying to rely on piercing the attorney-client privilege. Now, I circulated on X or Twitter a decision many years ago I was involved in which the exception to the attorney-client privilege would be if it was, well, the advice is sought in furtherance of a crime, and there's no evidence of that. But they try to say because there's an affidavit that may be contradicted by what he told his counsel, that somehow or other they should be able to have access to what he told his counsel to prove he filed an affidavit that wasn't truthful, accurate, or whatever. So that goes away, because here's the notion, and we've seen it in all these cases, particularly because Trump's lawyers have an easy way about them sometimes. And what we see is, if you go to an attorney and say, I'm going to go to a rally tomorrow, and I'm going to try to get into the Capitol, and I may bring a gun. Okay. Now, I made up this hypothetical, but it's not crazy under the circumstances. As a lawyer, that's not a privileged communication, because your client is talking about an ongoing crime. But say I come to a lawyer and I say, I know she's going to ask if I've had any affairs, because the reason this divorce is happening for Wade is because my wife has had affairs. So they may try to say tit for tat, pardon the expression. And so these are the people I've slept with, or I haven't slept with any one of them. All that communication in the divorce case is privileged, unless you say something like, I'm going to go out and shoot somebody, or I'm going to go lie to the court tomorrow, and I want you to know that I'm doing that, and I want you to tell me if I can get away with it. Okay, that would not be privileged, but that didn't happen in the Georgia case. So the lawyers have been trying to get the judge to buy into their notion that there's a statement that they want to use against Wade to show that he misled the court, and the judge won't allow it because whatever statement was made, it is protected by the attorney-client privilege because it didn't have the exception of the crime fraud rule, that is, that the statement was made in furtherance of a conspiracy, like the one these guys are charged with, including the lawyers, okay, like Rudy Giuliani. So there's a little irony in these guys chasing Wade for crime fraud in connection with the attorney-client relationship when it doesn't exist in his case, but it does exist in the case of some of the lawyers on trial. So that's kind of the way I see the case. What do I think is going to happen? Well, the case has to be proven. That is to say, the defense has to prove, and it can't be speculative. We think, we suspect, that kind of stuff. So the way it looks now, judges can surprise you, and he may have made a ruling while we're out here walking. The judge is going to decide, A, it doesn't appear that they were together, given the testimony, unrefuted by anyone else, except the former employee, who I think is not credible, that they were together before, in a romantic way, before Wade became the special prosecutor. And they had a judge on to show that it wasn't easy to get someone to take this job for fear of risk of life and for yourself and for those you care about. Okay. And then the second part is, what about the money? Well, there was a very convincing case that the prosecutor deals in a lot of money. And one of the reasons is because being a person of color, credit on the road doesn't always work. And this is what her dad encouraged her to do. And he told an anecdote on the stand about how, as a man in Massachusetts up there to give a lecture, he couldn't get a meal for himself, his wife, and his daughter because he only had credit cards and traveler's checks. But he had $10 in his pocket, and the meal came to $9 and change. So he learned at an early age that you had to have cash with you or else. So that's, I think that's a fair wrap-up of what I know about the case in Georgia as of now. My prediction, I'm prepared to be proven wrong, but I don't think so, not this time. I think the judge denies the motion to get rid of the prosecutor. Will the court look differently at Wade? I don't know. I don't think so. Because I don't think the judge can act upon something that's privileged, even if it's inculpatory, meaning it shows evidence that he did it. I have put online a book by a guy named Posner, who's talked about cross-examination, and I normally don't give tutorials to adversaries, but maybe these lawyers should read that because it might make more efficient the trials that we're going to have. Now, I also think Trump will be convicted. He'll be convicted in Georgia. He'll be convicted in New York. He will be convicted in D.C. The only case I have trouble believing is going to go forward is the judge loose cannon in Florida on the document case. But at some point, as the winds that blow ill on Trump's fortune may engender fear among those who would stand by Trump, who stands by no one else, who's going down, and he's going down. Now, let's talk about the Republican Party more generally. Republican Party aligned itself with Putin, who apparently, and our president believes this and said it, Putin apparently went and killed a guy named Navalny, who has been a resistor and in opposition to Putin, and he was housed at a cell in Siberia. And the short form, as they say, he went out for a walk, and he came back and he felt unwell, and then he died. Now, you have to wonder, did they put him in a wet bathing suit and send him out, and then bring him in after an hour, and then he died from exposure? Who knows? But just as Putin prefers to poison his adversaries, including this poor man who is now separated by death from his wife and family, merely for trying to exercise, well, his right to declaim misconduct by Putin. So the poison for this man has poisoned our own government, because Republicans are supporting literally a war criminal who invaded an adjoining province, adjoining nation state, Ukraine, and has done war against it. And the Republicans are standing by Putin and withholding the funds necessary to save Ukraine. You know, it's hard to believe that the Republican Party would do that, but that's what we have. We have the Republicans taking this position in contradiction of policies by the Republicans even since I was a kid. And we also have American politicians in the Republican Party willing to compromise NATO. Do they think the Atlantic Ocean will protect us from a conflict with Russia if it gets to that? So we're dealing with national security. So we have trials lining up, one and others soon, and we have the funds of Trump under siege. We have our international policy of insecurity, whereas other nation states in Europe are going to pick up the slack. And the president said today, our president Biden, that he's going to stand by our allies and we will never let them down. So, what a Friday, huh? So I'll be out tomorrow, I hope, and I look forward to seeing you. And so I bid you adieu from my cathedral of trees. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.